the I Make a Difference podcast, an adventure of exploration of your human self, the conditioned and unhealed parts of you, and your true self, the natural, real and powerful you. A pathway where you unravel, heal and uncover on your journey back to you. Hey there, welcome to the I Make a Difference podcast. I'm your host, Melinda. And in today's episode, we're going to start at the beginning. What it is that you decided when you were in soul form that has the most powerful impact, influence, and power over what you experience in your lifetime as a human being. How far you'll go in your evolvement as a human, how much you will connect to your true self, what you will express, who you will meet, and the adventures that you'll go on. Before I go there though, something that has come up regularly for me recently is the statement that the soul evolves. Not quite sure what your processing and thoughts are around it, but a question I want to pose to you is, why would a soul need to evolve? And I ask that because our soul is perfect. Our soul is a being of energy that is filled with light, that is filled with knowing, that is whole, that is full, where nothing is lacking. Our soul is nothing but purity and goodness. And a term you may even want to use is its godliness. So why would a soul need to evolve when it already is evolved? So that leads me to, it is our human self that goes through the process of evolvement in our earthly experience. But what influences that earthly experience and how far you will evolve in your human self is the choices your soul makes and puts its hand up for prior to you coming back onto this earth. There are a number of key things that your soul chooses. And one of the first things is that we choose our parents. We choose our parents and the family that is attached to our parents. And firstly, we choose them for the experiences that they will give us. Whether those experiences are uncomfortable, painful, hurtful, or joyful and expansive and beautiful. And isn't it interesting that for some of us we go through periods of not accepting our parents, and yet we chose them. And we chose them for the purpose of actually being able to grow and evolve, have reference points of who we are and who we're not, of what's right for us and what's not right for us, as our human self, so that when we do connect to our soul, we're able to know and recognize it because of the rightness that it is. I know I chose both of my parents, and I will say I chose wisely. My dad was an incredibly capable individual. However, due to his upbringing, he was impacted in many ways where he didn't express all of that potential. I had some initial time with him that was incredibly loving, but he was so focused on always being the centre of everybody's affection, and he was so charming, and he was always wheeling and dealing. And him and I ended up having an extremely volatile and abusive relationship. The experience I got in choosing my father as my father was one where I got to learn and know what anger is, what rejection is, abandonment, hurt, what violence is, and especially what power is. Power that is driven by emotion, that is used in a destructive way. And all of that enabled me, well, firstly, it actually sparked me to want to find out more about myself because I didn't like who I was. I was destructive, I was incredibly strong, but in a way that was protective rather than real. the beauty was being able to be sparked to go looking for myself as a result of my father's behaviours. But not only that, by having the reference point of having experienced all of those uncomfortable and destructive behaviours and emotions, I was able to actually then see the difference and feel the difference when I accessed true and real power, which is very gentle, very grounded, incredible clarity, incredible strength in what you know, and it's unwavering. Very different process to what my father gifted me was all those painful experiences. But not only that, my father also gifted me experiences around seeing what alcoholism was like, being a middle-income family to having lots of money and a very expensive property he bought to having no money. So he gave me the experience of the process of what it's like to see different aspects and dimensions of life. A gift that possibly another parent wouldn't have given me. And that helped me to be able to relate to the number of different people that I've guided, helped, supported and trained over the years. So even though I felt venom and hate towards my father at one stage, I now reached a point where, hey, I chose him, and I chose him wisely because of what I gained from it. And I actually thank him and love him for it. I know I chose my mum because she exposed me to some of the avenues that initially guided me and supported me to be able to work through the conditioning and the hurt from my father and set me on the journey to being able to open up more to myself, to discover more of my true self and who I really am. See, my mum in my teenage years exposed me to astrology. And interesting, the power of astrology in our natal chart, one of the big aspects of mine is the use of power. It's part of my lifetime journey. So a choice I made in soul form before I came back here. And she exposed me to ashrams where I was taught meditation. She exposed me to yoga. She exposed me to astral travelling and past life regressions. And at the time that she was exposing me to all of these things, and I forgot Carl Jung, Krishnamurti's readings, and also things like the Celestine Prophecy and Shirley MacLaine's book, some of the initial spiritual work that came out into society that made it more acceptable for people to take it on board. People would have thought I was foo-foo, that it was hippie shit that I was into, because it wasn't the norm. It was mysterious and had a mystique to it. And there were generalizations around and stigma around the type of people that were interested in those areas. Yet look at today, astrology is accepted and referred to by so many people. So many people on this earth now meditate daily. So many people are into yoga. So many people are into personal development. How times have changed. So we choose our parents because they will give us the gifts and our upbringing of experiences that help us discover who we are and who we're not. I said another factor included in our choice around our parents is that we choose the family that comes with it, because there will still be interesting experiences of pain and uncomfortableness and hurt, as well as joy and expectations and happiness and different dynamics where you will learn, you'll grow, and you'll experience. One of the key areas around the choice we make with our families is the karmic patterns that flow through the family. Because the karmic patterns are opportunities for you to actually change what has been an ongoing thing that's gone from generation to generation that perhaps is not healthy, that's not natural and real to who we are, and maybe is even not right. And to give you an example of these is the karmic patterns of my parents and their families. My dad was born out of wedlock, and in the era that he was born, that was frowned upon and not accepted. So he was actually adopted out. And it wasn't long after that his biological parents actually got married and had 2 more sons. So my dad went through being abandoned, because essentially in a lot of cases for people who have been adopted out, they can feel abandoned by their biological parents. And my dad was rejected because that's how he viewed it in being adopted out. My dad then, and this is a very strange and interesting thing that happened, my dad met his real biological mother when she turned up at his adopted mother's funeral. Their relationship did not last very long, and it was quite volatile, so he went through the whole abandonment and rejection process again. But from what I understand is that she went through that with her own parents. So she experienced it, she did it to him and he experienced it. And when I was 18, it was about a year after my parents had separated, my dad was with a new lady, and I'll never forget these words that were said to me. Your dad has told me to tell you you are no longer his daughter, and if you want to contact him, you contact him through a lawyer. So my dad rejected and abandoned me. I recognised that pattern, and I made a commitment that there was no way that karmic pattern that had gone on for those generations was going to continue beyond me. There was no way I was going to have a child that would experience or be exposed to being rejected and abandoned. As it is, I certainly am the last one in that karmic pattern because I didn't have a child. That's not the reason why I didn't have a child. It just wasn't what was right for me in this lifetime. Now, on my mother's side, my mother's father was the first biological child born in his family, and I say that because he actually had an older brother that was adopted, and he was a Capricorn. And I'm not sure if this is true or not, from what I've been told, was that he was hit by his father. My mother was the firstborn in her family, and she's a Capricorn, and she was hit by her father. I'm the firstborn in my family, and I'm a Capricorn, and I was hit by my father. So the karmic pattern that has flowed through on my mother's side, I yet again recognised it, and I made a commitment that there was no way that that experience was going to carry on beyond me into any other generation. And as I've just told you, I have not had a child, so it has not continued beyond my generation. So you have an opportunity with the families you have to recognise any karmic patterns that flow through your family where you can change that and cease it in this lifetime. Because in ceasing it, then you change the conditioning, you heal the hurt, and you evolve as a human being and working towards becoming your true self and operating from your soul. In addition to this, you also have patterns that will flow through in your family that are wonderful, amazing things as well. Some of them may be predispositions towards certain things, such as you might have sporting prowess or musical prowess or writing ability that flows through your family. Those are abilities, experiences and qualities to own and know that they're part of the expression of who you truly are. Then we move to, in choosing your parents, you're also choosing predispositions towards certain things. So genetically, it can be things like ADHD, it can be alcoholism, it can be certain diseases or health issues. And the more aware you are of those predispositions that flow through the family, the more you're going to be able to work with them to change the pattern of them and change the outcomes of them and manage them differently. Those predispositions yet again give you insight into being able to express your true self more Look at the different processes people use for healing these days. All part of our spiritual being that is coming to the fore. That's not to say that traditional medicine isn't right, because it still has its place and is important. My nana, my mum's mum, she had a predisposition towards pneumonia and emphysema. And I remember her talking to me about it one day and her encouraging me to give up smoking. I always knew I wasn't going to be able to go cold turkey, but I knew I would give up one day. I just had no idea how. And I had an operation about 10 or 12 years ago. It actually was an exploratory that ended up as an operation and was pretty horrendous. And I ended up in hospital for about 4 or 5 days. In the period of time I was in hospital, various things started happening to my body. And so they sent me for a scan. And when I came back out of it, the doctor came and said to me, "Thank goodness you don't smoke. You have fluid on your lungs." It was those words, "you have fluid on your lungs," that triggered my nana's words going through my head. And at that moment, I made a commitment that I was never going to smoke again. I did not deserve to go down the pathway of having emphysema or pneumonia, and that I had the ability to change this right then and there. And I haven't touched a cigarette again. Conveniently, I was so sick that I didn't actually want one, but it was part of the experience I chose so that I could consciously work with that predisposition and work on changing that whole process. We also choose, before we come back into our human form, the country we're born in, the race we are, the culture, the height we are, the shape of our body, the colour of our eyes, the colour of our hair. Because all of those elements are going to result in you experiencing different beliefs, different experiences, different processes, and they will all be opportunities yet again for you to evolve your human self and discover more about all the different things that the human life has to offer that are opportunities for us to evolve and grow. When you recognize you made the choice to have this body and to be in this space, then what we do is we care for it more, we appreciate it more, and we value it more. Because without your body, you're not on this earth and you're missing out on the opportunity to evolve more and become your true self while you're in physical form. We choose our parents because of the environment that we grow up in, because that gives us all the conditioning, that gives us all the areas for healing, but it also gives us the reference points of where we have been connected to our true self, so we have a connection we can go back to that we can open up and strengthen again. We also bring all our past lives into this life. There are things we will have experienced with other souls in previous lifetimes that need still to be completed, to be resolved. You don't actually need to go back into your past lives to be able to know what they are, because they will unfold in this lifetime. But also there will be experiences that need completion that don't necessarily need to be with that same person that you experienced it with in the past life, because it's your process, not the process of the two of you. So be aware and put out the intention that support me to resolve my past life areas that are not complete and areas for growth, healing and involvement in this lifetime. And be aware of all the opportunities around you for that to happen. Then the last area, soul agreements that we make prior to coming back to be on this human journey. So there's a belief that we make soul agreements with significant people that are in our life. People who will cause us pain and hurt, or they will trigger pain and hurt that is already within us. But they agreed to do that prior to coming back here so that you would go through that experience, so that the pain and hurt would surface, so that you then could do something about it, heal it and clear the way for your true self to shine through. Then there were people who you had soul agreements with who would walk beside you and support you in that healing process, support you in that unraveling process. The people who would reflect back to you who you truly are and what's within you. But I believe everybody that we meet, we have a soul agreement with. The person who smiles at you that you don't know when you're not feeling quite right. The person you give feedback to about how beautiful they look or what amazing service they gave you. All of those interactions were meant to be. They support the growth of people's self-worth, the belief in themselves, their self-confidence. So when you can see that every single person you come across and interact with is there as a gift for you, then imagine what you embrace and what you can receive and what you can give and share as well. I love that I chose to be me. So knowing that you, your true self and your soul, made all of those choices prior to you coming back onto this earth, prior to you taking human form, then how powerful is it to be able to know that and to see that every single experience you have, every single choice you make, is exactly the ones you were meant to have and make as part of the journey and the adventure that you signed up for, that you wanted to take on your evolution as a soul on a human adventure and process, so that your human self could evolve and so that your true self and soul could begin to shine through even more powerfully in a human body. So I encourage you, take some time, ponder on, why did you choose your parents? What are the gifts you've gained from them? What are some of the predispositions that you chose? What opportunities do you have with those predispositions? What are some of the karmic patterns on your mother's family side and on your father's family side that you have an opportunity to make different, to change, and to support them to cease so that they don't continue on in other generations? Or if they have continued on, how can you support that next generation so that it ceases with them? What are the magical things about the country you chose to be born in, the race and the culture you chose to be, the height you are, the hair colour, the eye colour, the body you have? What gifts have you gained, both painful and joyful, from being your physical self? And who are the key people you've made soul agreements with? How have they been of such value and worth in your life? I know I can look back now, and every single person who did something to me that wasn't right, that triggered pain and hurt in me, I chose that experience with them. And I thank them so much for fulfilling their part in that process and helping me get to where I am now, because they surfaced in me emotions and pain that needed healing. And without the experience with them, it may not have surfaced, or it may have surfaced later on. And I thank every beautiful person that has walked beside me and supporting me, understanding me, being there for me, loving me, caring for me, and reflecting back to me who I truly am. Because without you, I would not have seen as much as I do. I would not have known as much as I do now as to who I truly am. I do encourage you, yet again, if you want to drop me a line, send me an email at melinda@imakeadifferenceimad.com and share with me your insights, your processing, your thoughts or your questions. I'd love to hear them. And if you want to ask me questions for me to explore in a podcast, I won't fully promise I will, because it depends on the nature of the question, etc. But I will come back to you and I will respond to you. May you make a beautiful and amazing difference to yourself and own the life you've been living, remembering it's your human self that it's experiencing it, and your soul is there with you the whole way through it, and that you've made those choices to live the life you have. And how can you embrace and make the most of it even more so now, and your involvement as a human being and becoming a soul that is fully living, expressing and operating in a human body. Until next time, hey, look forward to more unraveling, more healing, and more uncovering of the beauty of who you are.